What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go!
Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days, 40 Nights. We're on to week number 3. We're on to day number 11. And we have a Super Bowl matchup set. Seahawks, Patriots, 2 weeks, San Francisco / I guess Santa Clara. Super Bowl 60. We're going to break down everything that happened in the AFC and NFC title games on this day 11 of 40 Days, 40 Nights. We'll also talk about some coaching hires because we got a big one out of Pittsburgh. A guy that I've been talking about a bunch in terms of someone who I thought was being underrated on this coaching cycle finally got a job. Is this the right fit? What does it mean for Aaron Rodgers? We'll break that all down for you in a little bit, plus some coordinated hires as well. So it should be a big show here as we start off the beginnings of the Super Bowl conversations and the Super Bowl previews, because we're going to have a lot of Super Bowl talk for the next 2 weeks. We now have the matchup set, and of course, we're going to have a lot of fun doing that. So we got 40 Days, 40 Nights, day 11, your boy EJ Stewart. We're streaming live every day, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., or today, 8:05 technically, but 8 a.m., 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, talking all things sports, talking all things pop culture, talking all things EJ. That's pretty much the vibe of this show. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, you know we're streaming live on YouTube. New Generation Media is where you'll find us on YouTube. We're, of course, streaming live as well on X. EJ_Stewart is where you'll find me on X. Make sure you follow me. Make sure you shout me out. Make sure you say, what's up, homie? And I'll say, what's up back. Follow me on X, EJ_Stewart. And we're also streaming live on Instagram. So IG Live also is where we're streaming. You want to hit me up there. Shout out to the folks always watching on IG Live. Action EJ is where you'll find me on Instagram Live. Let's get this show rolling, man, because we got a lot to talk about. We got to get to these games. Let's talk about these title games, Championship Sunday. And now we have a Super Bowl matchup that is indeed set. So we're going to be seeing Super Bowl 60. You're going to have, I think, a matchup that I think a lot of people they'll get behind eventually. I'll be honest. I think when you think about Seahawks, Patriots, not the sexiest matchup, given the names, given the stars that we are accustomed to seeing in the Super Bowl. But I do think there's some exciting players. I do think there's some exciting storylines. And I do think that once we kind of get closer to the game, there'll be a lot of excitement for this one. And just an early kind of feel I have for this is the feel I had weeks ago. I remember on Maggie and Perlow show, towards, the end of the run on the Infinity Sports Network, I think I made a comment that, shocked some people, or maybe at least perked some eyebrows, when I mentioned that I felt like whoever was going to come out of the NFC was probably going to curb stomp the AFC. I think the word was the NFC is going to beat the brakes off whoever comes out of the AFC. And I think if you watch those 2 games on Sunday, if you watch the AFC Championship game, I know there was weather elements in the second half, but forget about the second half. Just take the first half. If you watch the first half of the AFC Championship game, and then you watch the entire 4 quarters of the NFC Championship game, you would see that these are 2 leagues that are playing on entirely different levels. I think it's fair to say that the 2 teams in the AFC that were there standing at the end were the best teams in the AFC. And I also feel like the 2 best teams in the NFC who were standing there at the end were playing on Sunday too. And it looked like a different sport. The other 2 games look like those other 2 teams. They look like they were playing in the AFC. They look like they were playing in 1985. They actually looked a lot like those games you watch on NFL Network on a random June summer weekend day, the NFL Network showing old games, and they're showing like the 1990 NFC title game between like the Giants and the 49ers, or one of these low scoring, rough and tumble kind of games. That's what that game looked like. And then you watched what you saw in Seattle, and it's speed, it's big playmaking. It just looks like an entirely different sport. And my early feel on this is that the Patriots are in a lot of trouble. Like, congrats going to the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that game in a second. But I feel like it was clear to me for most of the season that the NFC had a major leg up in the AFC this year. Now, the AFC had some superstar quarterbacks, which have in past years kind of tended to tip the scales, or maybe even the scales out. So if you tell me, hey, well, listen, yes, the AFC, man, it looked that great, but they got Josh Allen, they got Patrick Mahomes, and they got Lamar Jackson. So could those guys have gotten to this game and maybe made it a little more interesting? Yeah, maybe that's the case. But given how those seasons were going, I kept saying, I don't know if we're going to see those guys this year. I'm seeing a changing of the guard in the AFC. So now we have Drake May entering this game, and I will say now for a third straight game, Drake May got to play essentially a scrimmage. I felt like the game against the Chargers essentially was a scrimmage. I felt the game against the Texans ended up being a scrimmage. And I think this game against the Broncos also ended up essentially being a scrimmage. Now, he didn't have the crucial mistakes that he was making in the first game, so I guess a little bit of improvement. But damn, I would like to see you move the ball a little bit. I'd like to see you able to put the ball in the end zone without having to, have, basically, perfect field position gets wrapped to you by Jarrett Stidham. Like, he has been able to, once again, kind of just, I guess, game manage his way through this. But yesterday, I don't know what I would call that game yesterday. I guess you would also say he was game managing. But we still haven't seen a good Drake May game. But it doesn't matter because the teams that he's been playing against, once again, have been so ill-equipped, both from a playing standpoint and a coaching standpoint this week. They've been so ill-equipped to actually give the Patriots a real threat in these games that Drake May. Now, this one was the closest one, and they had to make at least one drive in the second half to make this, the Patriots win this game. But they were so ill-equipped to really give the Patriots any real scare that it didn't really matter in the end that he didn't have a great game. All that matters was that they won. That is just not, I think, how they're going to be able to win a Super Bowl against really almost any NFC team they were going to play, but not the Seahawks team that we're seeing right now that is hitting on complete all cylinders. I got to shout out my guy, Kendall Stewart, who was on the show. There was some technical difficulties, obviously, on Friday night when he was on, but he was on for a decent amount of time before any technical difficulties happened. And he said that the Seahawks were hitting on all cylinders. He said that he expected Sam Darnold, who had been playing well, to really be locked in, and he was 1,050% right. The guy was phenomenal. And the Seahawks, as a team and as an offense, they really, really looked locked in. I thought the Rams had played a pretty good game. We'll get into some of their coaching issues as well. I thought they played a pretty good game. They had a muff punt that really put them behind the 8 ball. But besides that, I thought, the Rams, I didn't feel like the Rams comported themselves in a bad way. I just feel like they played against a team that looks like a team of destiny, a team that looks like it's kind of like lined up and ready for them to be the team that we anoint Super Bowl champions. It just looks like it's a Seahawks year. That's what it looks like. And there's been a lot of doubters of that team, and I know Mike McDonald wanted to kind of shout out those doubters, especially the people of Sam Darnold. But Seahawks are legit. Seahawks are absolutely legit. Let's talk a little bit more about the NFC Championship game. We'll get back to the AFC Championship game as we talk about these Super Bowl matchups being set. You will have, obviously, the Patriots facing the Seahawks in 2 weeks in Santa Clara for Super Bowl 60. It's all happening in part because the Seahawks won a shootout against the Rams to advance to the Super Bowl yesterday. 31-27 was the final score. This was really the true redemption of Sam Darnold. And I sat here in this chair and said that I think this was going to be a close game. I think Sam Darnold will play well. But when it came down to one drive, one play, or needing to put your team in a position to win, I just felt like there was going to be a play where Sam Darnold was going to hurt his team, whether it be a strip sack or interception or missing a pass, and that it was going to allow the Rams to win this game because Matthew Stafford, in the end, is ice cold. That didn't happen. Sam Darnold, when he got the ball last, did not allow them to get the ball back. And it was clear that when the Rams missed that opportunity going for it on fourth down in their last drive, that it was now going to come down to the Seahawks offense and whether or not they were going to be able to move the ball. And they did. And Sam Darnold was great. And obviously there were some penalties that helped the Seahawks, but Sam was money. Played the best game of his career and probably the most important game of his career. And any of the doubts you have about Sam at this point, about whether or not he can be that kind of guy in that kind of moment, you got to put him aside. If he chokes next, 2 weeks from now, then we'll have those conversations again. But that was the game that he's supposed to lose. If you think about Sam Darnold's career, I've mentioned and I've said on the show, I feel like he's been the Eugene of the NFL. This guy who just seems to be a jinx. He just seems to have bad luck. And when it feels like everything should go right for him, it seems like somehow things go wrong for him. That has been a lot of his career. And this seemed like a typical game where Sam Eugene Darnold was going to show up. And this was going to be another game where we say, see, that's why that guy should have never been number 2. That's why that guy is never going to be a franchise player. That's why you can't bet on any team to win anything of significance with Sam Darnold as your quarterback. I thought he was accurate. I thought he was smart with the football. I thought he was tough. He also took some hits in this game, and he popped back up. He's obviously playing with this oblique injury that is no fun. They mentioned this week, once again, going into this game, that he essentially made no deep passes in practice all week. His practice schedule was extremely limited because they're trying to keep him as, basically in bubble wrap as much as possible until game time. They really still don't know what he's going to look like until he actually goes out there and starts ripping throws left and right. And guess what? He's ripping throws, man. Again, accurate, strong with the football, and he was phenomenal. He was phenomenal. All credit due to Sam Darnold. And I sit here today, we'll have obviously more breakdown, more predictions of what's going to happen in 2 weeks. But I feel like you're about to see Sam Darnold be hoisted into Super Bowl winning quarterback category. That's the feeling I have today. They faced a defense that is up and down, but is typically good and has owned him. I mean, again, I mentioned it. 4 quarters to last year against the Rams in the playoffs. 4 quarters in the first game they played this year, 4 interceptions in that game. And then I would argue at least 3 quarters of that last game they won in Seattle, that game where they had that miraculous comeback, where it was like he was seeing ghosts, as he said famously on Monday Night Football years and years ago when he was playing for the New York Jets. Turnovers, not careful or not really confident in what he was seeing in the coverages. The Rams seem to have his number, but you got to give credit to him. You got to give a lot of credit to Clint Kubiak, who I thought called a masterclass of a game. It started with their ability to really establish the run in that first drive. The running game was phenomenal. Kenneth Walker, that guy was running like a maniac, and in the best ways. You couldn't get him down. Not only was he running people over, also the shiftiness. Everyone talked about, oh, Charbonnet's gone. Now it's going to be all this attention on Walker. Is he going to be able to carry the load? They were just fine. They were just fine with Kenneth Walker being the guy. He's been one of the better running backs in the league the last few years. He's been one of the best running backs this season. He's kind of underrated, like a lot of the Seahawks team. The Seahawks team, a lot of them are underrated, not really giving them probably the respect they deserve, and they look like a team that wants their look back and they want their respect, their damn respect too, as LeBron James famously said once after winning a championship with the Lakers. That's what they look like to me. And the Rams, I think credit to Matthew Stafford. I watched Matthew Stafford play. That guy still, to me, is the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't care what you tell me. I don't care who you want to put up there, who the other folks are you want to say, deserve that kind of thing. He's the best quarterback. Nobody makes the throws that he makes on a regular basis. He can't run. So if you're gonna say, well, he's not as mobile, and that's why you want to bring me some other name, fine. The only name I'm talking to you about is Patrick Mahomes, by the way. That's the only name you're bringing up to me if you're saying there's any quarterback better than Matthew Stafford right now. And I watched Patrick Mahomes play this year, and I watched the Chiefs offense, and they were kind of mid. They didn't look like the Rams looked like last night. They didn't look like how the Rams looked most of the season. I'm talking about not what you did 3 years ago or 2 years ago or your legacy. I'm talking about right now. Nobody's playing the quarterback position better than this guy. And it was going to take, to me, it looked like, it was clear in this game, a Superman effort to beat this team, and he almost did. They were right there at the end, and then we get to some of the coaching stuff. So I think this game will begin. I don't want to say begin the questions about Sean McVay in terms of like just how good he is in these situations and what he is as a big game coach. Because once you win a championship, you're kind of Teflon. But I do think what I've been saying for really most of these playoffs is that Sean McVay and his game management typically more conservative, honestly. In this case, he actually maybe was a little too aggressive. In LA, it's a conversation, and around Rams fans, it's a conversation. But it's not really been a conversation beyond those circles, and now it is. I think now people are being like, "Oh, Snoop! Oh, shoot! This guy may not be able to manage games on the stretch. He's making some very questionable decisions, and he hurt them, man. He hurt them. I think going into halftime and decisions to the play calling that didn't allow them to run more time with the clock. They couldn't get a first down. That wouldn't have allowed the Seahawks to get the ball back. Seahawks handled that masterfully, getting the ball back, going down, getting points. And that, to me, that middle quarter, which is such an important quarter, that last 4 minutes and the first 4 minutes of the second half, first 4 minutes, first half, first 4 minutes, second half, they're crucial. And the Seahawks owned that part of the game. And it just, once that happened, it just threw kind of the equilibrium of the game. It felt like the Rams kind of weathered the early Seahawks storm and were playing pretty okay. And then once they gave that touchdown to kind of start the second half, it just put the game flow just got screwed up. And now the Rams are playing catch up, and it was going to be a tough sailing from there. So Seahawks scored a touchdown right at the end of the first half. Jackson Smith-Njigba scored the touchdown, and then obviously they get another touchdown because they muff a punt. And then they just got killed. They got absolutely killed to start that first half, the end of the first half, and to start that second half, and that was to me really put them in a terrible position. So McVay management in the middle quarter terrible, execution in the middle quarter terrible, and then I will say this: I didn't hate the fourth down going for it. It didn't work. So we're gonna sit here today and we're gonna be and moan about it, and I totally get it. And there are some arguments I will have, and I would say you guys are dummies, like I was saying about that stupid Brandon Cooks play. You guys are dummies to think that was a catch. It's just not a catch. You can hate the rules, and I'm totally fine with hating the rules. To say that according to the rules it should have been a catch tells me you don't know anything about football. You don't know anything about what a catch is in the NFL, which to be honest is the NFL's fault. To be fair, I don't even blame you, but you still don't know what you're talking about. This fourth down call is one of those things where I don't sit here and say, hey, I think you're a dummy if you think he shouldn't have went for it and just kicked the field goal. I feel like they needed to go for it. I just felt like the Seahawks offense was kind of showing that they had these guys. There wasn't going to be a position where you were convinced you were going to get the ball back. That's just the game I saw. And it's 4th and 4. That's not 4th and 18. Yes, of course, if you cut it to 1, then you give a chance an opportunity where even if you don't stop them on the first few plays, you can then stop them maybe with deep in your territory, maybe kick a long field goal. People are running to try to kill him for that. I don't think that's a killable thing. I'm sorry. I'm not doing that. I don't have a problem at all with him going for it. He's got Matthew Stafford, who again on that drive was insane. I mean, he was money again on that drive. But credit the Seahawks defense, man. I thought their defense in that particular drive in the red zone was awesome. Just those receivers were blanketed. And I saw after the game, Puka Nacua actually mentioned that, him and Stafford didn't get on the same page on those plays, and he really regrets that, and he feels like he's going to be thinking about that for a long time. I'm not sure, what could have went wrong in terms of not being able to find Puka Nacua, but I was just watching those replays of those plays when they got in the territory to score near the goal line. Nobody's open. Everybody's blanketed. The coverage is airtight. Sean McVay, I think kicked himself not calling a timeout on that last play on the fourth down. He ran up there, thinking maybe he needed to call a timeout because he didn't like what he saw. But he also understood that needing 3 timeouts on the last drive is going to be crucial. So he didn't call it, which, I kind of understand. You're going to need 3 timeouts if you don't get this thing right. So I understand wanting to keep that in your pocket. What I don't understand is how he managed the last drive, where your team is on defense and there's a bang play with Cooper Kupp. I don't know for sure if they review that, if it's being overturned and they're going to call him short or say it's not a catch. But I'm also not 100% convinced they wouldn't have overturned it, which means that for him to call a timeout and not just challenge, knowing the challenge equals a timeout. If you lose it, it's just a timeout. If you win it, you keep your timeout, but the clock stops either way. For him to have, to me, just a complete mental lapse. It's just a complete mental lapse in terms of the game is in a tight situation. This is pressure-packed moments. This is when the guys who are the great coaches usually separate themselves when it comes to game management. And I still think Sean McVay is a great coach, but he was not great yesterday. He was mid at best yesterday. That's not a moment where you call a timeout on a play that's that close. I mean, and it wasn't a play to me that he should have been even racing to like his people in the stands or his people in the booth to be like, what does it look like? Is that a first down? To me, it's so close on the scene. You know, all right, well, I guys just throw this challenge out. I'm running out of time anyway. Once it gets under 2 minutes, I can't challenge anything regardless. So it doesn't make sense to me to keep this challenge flag in my pocket. We see this all the time in the NBA. Like, there are certain moments in the game where you're just like, you know what? It doesn't really, even if I lose this, I lose it, whatever, but we're going to have to call a timeout regardless. And it's a close enough play. And you never know what these refs are going to do in the NBA. So a lot of coaches will just challenge things that are like look like unlikely to go, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, they need to look at it. And to be honest, if you challenge, you also kind of get an extended timeout because if they take a long look at it, then it's more time to talk to your team, more time for you guys to get rest, and you also can disrupt the flow of the game. So it makes a lot of sense during those moments to just throw the challenge in the NBA. And in this case, this felt like a very NBA moment. But in the NFL, would have been this is the same thing where that play is close. You're going to have to call a timeout to stop the clock anyway. So I'm throwing the challenge flag because, like, I mean, you got to look at that. Your season's on the line. Everything's on the line. And Cooper Kupp makes a phenomenal play, a phenomenal physical effort. I saw shout out to Walter Sharp. I believe his name is on Walter Football. That's how I know him. Man. I think his name's Walter Sharp on X. You know, he had basically a frame by frame breakdown of that. You know, Cooper Kupp extending the ball right by the first down marker. What it looked like to me is the first moment his shoulder hits the ground, he looks short. It's a frame by frame, and then you could argue, is his shoulder actually down? And look, if the referees want to come back in that crazy crowd, which was awesome yesterday, I mentioned during these playoffs that it's been awesome just to see the 12th man revitalized in this way. A little bit of an old EJ take. I've never been the biggest fan of 12th man, not because of anything they did. They're a great crowd. They are a great fan base, and they're phenomenal, as they were yesterday. I just look at that stadium, which they've changed the name a million times. I think it's now Lumen Stadium, whatever they call it. Like, I just have seen that Lumen Field, rather. The stadium, which they were very much braggadocious about, was built in a way to, what's the word? Juice is the best word I can describe it. Juice the crowd noise. It's an architecture. They architecturally built a stadium so it could be as loud as possible. And the crowd obliges. The crowd helps. The crowd is indeed crazy. But they do this thing, oh, we're the loudest crowd. What do we do? I'm like, oh, you're the loudest crowd because they built a stadium to make it the loudest. And then we give them all the credit. So I've had takes in the past where I'm like, 12th man's great, but I mean, your stadium is been coaxed to allow you guys to be this loud. It's almost like a team that's saying, oh, we hit the most home runs when you play in a bandbox. That's how I kind of view Lumen Field. It's not anything against the fans. It's just the field itself. But with that being said, they were awesome in this game. And there's an opportunity where maybe a ref in that situation, you want to tell that crazy fan base that, yeah, actually he was short, or maybe it wasn't even a catch. And that's the not catch thing is the fascinating one because of, again, what happened with Brandon Cooks. I think he made a football move. I don't think this was a guy going to the ground in the same way that Brandon Cooks was. I think he caught the ball, was making a move to then try to extend the ball, and then the ball popped out. That's how I see it. But this would have been the conversation. this would have absolutely been the conversation. Shout out to my guy Rob DeRay. He's saying forget short. I'm not positive Kupp maintained control through the process of the catch. And given how these refs call it, it's, again, you have to challenge it. You have to. And totally agree again with Rob Nuts not to challenge that. You have to. I think he maintained possession. Because, again, I think it was a football move. But now we're getting to think, who knows, I don't know. And once it becomes that, throw the flag, man. Throw the flag. Once we're kind of parsing through very, very small, minute things in the rule book, anything can happen at that point in a challenge. And then the fact that he called the timeout, and then it's like, well, maybe I should challenge this, knowing that, well, now you're essentially calling 2 timeouts in a row because you can't call 2 timeouts in a row in the same play, and you wasted your opportunity to throw a challenge on that spot. And it was awful. It was awful management. I cannot guarantee that call gets overturned. I cannot guarantee that the Seahawks, even if it is a 4th and inches, that they don't go for it on 4th down to try to just win the game. Now that would have been a crazy call that deep in your territory. But considering a touchdown was needed, they might have went for it on 4th and inches. No, for a touchdown for the Rams rather, not like a field goal. So you're not really concerned about field goal position. It's just about keeping them out of the end zone. But the fact that the Rams didn't even give themselves an opportunity to put themselves in that spot, it was a bad coaching job there. And Sean McVay definitely didn't distinguish himself at all with how he ended that game. You want to argue with me with the 4th down call? I think reasonable minds can see both sides. And I'm not usually Mr. Aggressive, go for it guy all the time. I'm more in the middle. I wouldn't consider myself a super conservative football mind when it comes to going for it on 4th down either. I looked at that, and again, I felt like with the way the Rams defense to me was struggling almost the entire game. They were pretty good in the second quarter. That was definitely their best quarter of this game. But they couldn't cover Jackson Smith-Njigba. They couldn't cover anybody. They couldn't cover Kupp. Like, their only shot was when they got pressure, and they were able to get pressure at times. I thought Fisk played a phenomenal game. Verse was a little quiet for a lot of this game. But to me, like, they couldn't really stop them. So I would have been inclined to say, you know what, we got to try to win the game here. Let's try to get this touchdown. We also could get a 1st down here. That's another aspect of it, too, is the fact that you didn't even need a touchdown. You could have got a 1st down in the play as well. Now the Seahawks can't just play the end zone, technically. They have to play the 1st down sticks as well. So, again, sometimes you got to shake the other team's hand, man, and say, you guys are pros, too, which is what Charles Barkley says a ton. Sometimes you got to shake their hand and say, hey, man, that's a great job. I trust Sean McVay in that spot to have a good call. I trust Matthew Stafford. I trust him with my life on that kind of play. And the Seahawks guarded it extremely well. So they deserve a lot of credit there. I'm not going to kill Sean McVay for that. I will kill him for how they ended the first half. It destroyed the game. The game just got screwed up because of how they ended that half. And then the poor execution to start the second half. That was the game. That was the game. We can talk about all these other plays, but losing that middle quarter, the 5th quarter of the game that football coaches always talk about, but people outside of football, they don't really focus on it as much. Once that 5th quarter was lost, it just put the Rams in a situation where they're just having to play catch up. They're talking about going for it on 4th downs. They needed a Rick Woolen losing his mind play again in order for them to get back into the game. They, in many ways, were fortunate to be in the game, given the mistakes that happened. That 5th quarter, I think, was a big thing. And obviously the questions, and we'll talk about the Seahawks a little bit again still, but just on the Rams real quickly. Another thing, aspect about this game, you watched how brilliant Matthew Stafford was, but he is 37 years old. It was very dicey to start this season of how healthy he would be given the severity of a back injury he was dealing with. He needed an epidural just to get through training camp. And I'll be honest, I was saying during the training camp situation and earlier in the year, I really was wondering what kind of Matthew Stafford we were going to see. I was extremely concerned about him. And then he had an MVP caliber year. I think he should win the MVP. And I said earlier, I think he's the best quarterback in the NFL. But he is 37. He has battled his many, many injuries over the course of his career. And there are real questions about what we can expect to see from him moving forward and whether or not this is the end of his career. I hope it's not. I know Sean McVay hopes it's not. Here he was when he was asked about it.
John, do you expect Matthew Stafford to be back next season?
Yeah, if he still wants to play, what the hell kind of question is that? The answer, yeah. You have to ask him. We've been totally present. I know that if he wants to, he's still playing at a pretty damn good clip. He's the MVP of the league, and if he's not, I got respect for everybody else, but this guy played at a level that's just different.
He's right. He's right. He's the MVP. And I'm not. I'll say this. There are folks who will use the playoffs as like their reasoning to say, oh, look, see, this is why this guy's the MVP. It is a regular season award. And I'm one of those folks that I'm totally fine with it being a regular season award. We've watched these guys bash their brains in for 17, 18 weeks. I'm fine with awarding people for how they played during that time where they're bashing their heads in for 17, 18 weeks. I don't need to say, oh, let's just wait until the postseason to give out awards. That to me is silly. Like, we give out postseason awards. We give out a Super Bowl trophy. They say this all the time in the NBA. They're like, oh, these NBA regular season awards are meaningless and we should just only focus on the playoffs. Well, in the playoffs, we give out finals MVP and you win NBA championships. Like, that to me should be the most important. We can compartmentalize what a regular season award means, and it's totally within the realms of to me, like, reasonability. That's even a word, reasonability. I think that's a word. Like, but what are we doing here? I don't have a problem with that. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the quarterback you've seen, compare Matthew Stafford to Drake May and show you that he obviously was better. That's not at all part of this conversation. What I will tell you, though, is what you've seen in the postseason, this postseason, in terms of Matthew Stafford yesterday, what you saw in the clutch in Chicago. I know he's a little spotty in Carolina, but that what you saw yesterday is what he's been all year. That has been what he has been all year. And if you're telling me that there's another quarterback that was making those kind of throws and making those kind of plays, you're lying to me. You're lying to me. And as no disrespect to Drake May, as no disrespect to anybody else in terms of the regular season that they had, but I have no doubt in my mind that, to me, he deserves the MVP. Did he have a perfect season? No. He had a couple of blips here and there where he threw some picks. But he has the best stats. His team was amazing. I don't know what the conversation is. So I agree. He definitely should be the MVP. I have no problem at all with him taking home the award. But there is questions about whether or not he really will retire. Sean McVay getting a little prickly there, being like, oh, what do you mean? What kind of question is that? I think once he kind of understood the question, because the question wasn't about would you bring Matthew Stafford back. Yeah, that is a dumb question, which is not what he was asking. But he's hot. He's ready to blow up at anybody who tells him something he doesn't like because, he's a competitor and he lost, an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. And I think even he knows, because he's a smart football guy and he's a football guy just in general, that like the way that game flow went, a lot of the arrows we can point to him, and just knowing him, I think he's an accountable guy. I think he's going to be thinking long and hard about a lot of these decisions that were made, some mistakes that maybe he made as a coach. So he was ready to jump out the window on any guy that asked him a question that seemed sideways. That question wasn't even sideways, and he was still jumping out the window. So, but yeah, obviously, we know the Rams want him back. The question is, will Stafford come back? And McVay kind of said he doesn't know. He said that, that's something you have to ask him. I know he's playing at an extremely high level, but yeah, we do want him back. Now, here was Matthew Stafford when he was asked about it. He was a lot more mum in terms of just kind of thinking about what this season means and whether or not it's his last one.
I can't generalize, 6 months of my life, 10 minutes after a loss. So appreciate the guys in this locker room a whole hell of a lot. Everybody that helped me, and helped our team be as successful as we were this year. And that's all I'll answer for you.
I'll say this, man. I hope this isn't the end of Matt. I hope it's not the end. And I know, and again, I'm one of those folks who typically, when you're playing, when you have some injuries and you're, Father Time, catches up to all athletes. It seems like, except for LeBron James, though I think it's starting to catch up to him too a little bit now. I'm usually the one that's like, hey man, like don't ride it until the wheels fall off, man. Like if it seems like even a little bit like this may not be physically for your best moving forward, then pull out and say, you know what, it's time to hang up. I don't feel that way about Matthew Stafford. Now, I don't know what the deal is with his back. He didn't miss a game with it. He seemed fine all season from what I saw. I don't like these guys play through incredible pain, incredible situations physically that we would never understand as a quote unquote civilian. So he may be dealing with things and have been dealing with things all season that were so crazy and ridiculous that like in order for him to think that he could do that again for another 18 weeks plus a postseason may be crazy. I don't have that information. That would only be information that the Rams medical staff and the front office and Stafford and his family and McVay would know. I just know from the guy I see playing on Sundays is we will be losing the best quarterback in the NFL if he retires. Like he is as good as he's ever been. And to me, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me it's a totally different player, totally different situation. But Matthew Stafford has always had the golden arm. He's always had this arm talent that was generational. It's why he was drafted number 1. It's kind of the only reason. It's not like he won at Georgia. I'm not going to tell you he never won at Georgia. But he never won a national title. He may have won an SEC title. I'm not even sure about that. If he did, I apologize if he did. But he never won a national championship. That's for sure. And they never really were even in the conversation for winning a national title while he was there when he was playing. Obviously, going into years, he was a big-time recruit. I think he started as a freshman. And, there was always talk about, Georgia, maybe this is the team. That's ironic, right? Because Georgia's now a juggernaut, and they always seem like the team. But they were saying, this is the team that finally wins a title since Herschel Walker. And they always disappointed. It's one of the reasons why Mark Richt eventually got fired there. And while he was there, he never won a Heisman, never won a national championship. He got drafted number 1 because they were like, do you see the throws this guy makes? Like, yeah, I know they lost to Florida again. Oh, yeah, I know they lost to Alabama again. But the guy's talent is unreal. And then we learned he was super tough when he got to the NFL. But, you're just going to take a chance with that talent and see if we could turn this guy into a champion. And then, he's playing on bad teams. But it wasn't just the bad teams. Everybody says, it's just bad teams. That's why he didn't win. He also came up short at times. He also turned the ball over at times. It wasn't all just bad team as to why the Lions weren't great. And then he got to L.A., he got McVay, and they hooked up and they won a championship. Though I think the first one, he wasn't Super Bowl MVP. I think his play was kind of uneven. It felt like an Aaron Donald Cooper Cup championship. But now he's at this stage of his career, and I think he's seen so much football. He's so smart with the ball. He knows defenses. He knows how to read defense. He knows what defense is trying to do to him. This almost reminds me of like when that one year when like Michael Vick was basically like a video game playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, where it was essentially like his physical tools had caught up with like the discipline that was needed plus his understanding of the game to create what seemed like almost a perfect quarterback for one season. The season he had with Philly when they won the division, and he was I think he finished second MVP that year. That is what I feel like I see from Matthew Stafford this year, but in a different way. He obviously is not the running quarterback Michael Vick is. But Matthew Stafford has not lost anything when it comes to his arm talent. Nothing, which is remarkable considering he's 37 years old. But again, to me, it also seems like his understanding of that offense and his understanding of defenses also is now at God mode level. So he's got this crazy arm talent, which he's always had. And now he understands the game and the quarterbacking in a way that you only can by playing as many games as he's played. And as long as that Venn diagram is still together, he should play. Now, as soon as that Venn diagram starts to separate and become two circles again, where maybe now he doesn't have the physical tools to do what he does, even if the mind is there, that's when I understand where maybe he want to get out because he has taken a lot of hits. He has had a great deal of damage to his body. But when he could throw the ball still like that, and with the way he's still recognizing defenses and understanding what teams are doing to him, I mean, some of the windows he was finding, you just shake your head. I don't know how he does it. I mean, he's just a great player, man. And if this is the end, then he's walking into the Hall of Fame. But he looks like a guy that, as long as he is healthy, every year he's still playing, the Rams gonna have a shot to win the Super Bowl. But man, the Seahawks, shout out to them. They're again advanced to the Super Bowl. One other thing I want to say on Seattle. First of all, phenomenal job by Mike McDonald. His defense took some lumps. Some of them were kind of self-inflicted. Reek Woolen, who seems to always find a rake to step on or a banana peel to slip on, he may have had one of the worst gaffes in NFL history had they lost this game. He's lucky his team is so dominant that they were able to overcome even that level of stupidity. But to actually make a great play defensively, because it was a great play, guarding Puka Nacua, almost picking off Matthew Stafford in what was perfect coverage, which is the Reek Woolley experience, is that he actually is talented. He actually can make some plays, but to have that play happen and then you're chirping on the sidelines, crazy. And there's some people saying, oh, I don't want to see a flag thrown there. And to be honest, if they didn't throw a flag, I would have zero problem. I think given the referee was standing right there and he's right by the sidelines, and you have like the Rams players and coaches looking at him and be like, do you see what this idiot is doing? Like, are you really not going to throw a flag? This is obviously taunting. You're not allowed to do this. He put the refs in an impossible. They had no choice but throw the flag. That ref wanted to get out of that sideline alive from the Rams. They had no choice to throw that flag. So I had no problem with the ref throwing it. It was a flag. It was obvious. If he doesn't, then fine. I know. I don't want to see the refs decide a game in that way. But it's a fourth down. You get the team off the field, and they're about to punt, and now you have a chance to just put this team away. I thought it was about to be a potential knockout blow for the Rams. You put them back on the field, they convert 3rd and long, and because of a penalty, and you're chirping at Matthew Stafford while you're walking out of there before they throw that flag. And on the very next play, they target your ass, and you get burned like burnt toast for a touchdown. And now it's a ball game. It's one of those things, man, where this is one of those want to get away. Remember those airline commercials? That was a want to get away moment. I was like, man, I don't know if there's any NFL player that wants to be Reek Woolen at this very moment in time. like a situation where you're going to look back and be like, this guy may have freaking cost us an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl by just being out of his mind. It's the only way I can describe it. Like, it's just a play you absolutely cannot make. And I saw, I think it was Jason McCourty on X was like, every DB knows you can't do that. It's so letter of the law. Like, again, could you get away with it? Maybe refs don't want to maybe make it about themselves, but we know what these refs have been about. They've wanted to make it about themselves this entire postseason, so of course they're going to throw that flag there. But the rules are very clear. You cannot literally he was on their sideline. It wasn't like he was even like on the field. He at one point was actually on the sideline, on the Rams sideline, talking crazy to everybody that was there. And it was like, again, he was asking for a flag. And then to get burned on the next play is crazy. So it wasn't as if Mike McDonald's defense was perfect. Again, they were going up against a final boss to me and Matthew Stafford, and they definitely got hurt a little bit. But they bowled up what they needed to. And again, the offensive game planning from Clint Kubiak was a masterclass. So shout out to the coaching staff for the Seahawks. But I think we need to give a major shout out to John Schneider. Someone who I think is not all that well known outside of NFL circles. And when we have like kind of these quote unquote casual conversations about football and the best run teams in the NFL and best front offices, his name doesn't get brought up enough. You can make a case, right? I mean, we're all this is the overreaction hyperbole Monday. Anytime you come after a playoff game, especially Championship Sunday, the only other more hyperbolic days of the year are the day after the Super Bowl and, to me, the day after the NBA championship in sports. Those are the two most hyperbolic days of the sports calendar. And this is number 3. But Snyder is a top 5 general manager in the NFL. Easy. Maybe top 3. I mean, think about where the Seahawks were just a few years ago. We're not talking about 8 years ago, 10 years ago. We're talking about basically 4 years ago. They were, 6-10? I believe Russell Wilson's last year, or 5-11, something like that. They were not a good team. They jettisoned Russell Wilson, who kind of asked out and was kind of starting to become really a pain in the ass by the end. They jettisoned their franchise quarterback, and they decided to move forward with Geno Smith. Once you jettison your franchise quarterback, you're thinking, all right, tank season, baby. But hey, listen, with they draft extremely well. They were extremely young defensively back then, and even though they jettisoned Russell Wilson, who ended up being a disaster with Nate Hackett in Denver, they ended up making the playoffs. Denver didn't make the playoffs. They made the playoffs. They were able to put together a team that was competitive. They didn't win a game, but they were respectable, right? And then another year respectable, but don't make the playoffs in the second year. And then you fire Pete Carroll. You fire a legend, an absolute legend, someone who will probably have a statue outside of Lumen Field or wherever the hell they call it 5 years from now, because it seems like this stadium changes names like I change socks every day. I mean, so who knows what it'll be called. But whatever that stadium is in Seattle, Pete Carroll very well could have a statue. And you fired him. Got rid of him. So now, okay, we're removed from the Russell Wilson era. We're now also removing ourselves from the Pete Carroll era. We move forward with Geno Smith, who has become now a good quarterback, and it's kind of like our franchise quarterback at this point in time. He's played that well, but he's still Geno. He's not like, he's not Matthew Stafford. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Patrick Mahomes. But, okay, now we're kind of in a real situation of flux. We're like, what is the direction of this team? Now we're 2 years in a row. We were above 500, but we have not won a championship. Obviously, we haven't competed close to the title. And now the guys that have won championships for us, our championship era of players and coaches, are now all gone. So what does the Seahawks look like here? That, to me, it reads and spells and looks like rebuild. You're going to have to tear this thing down and blow it completely up because this thing is not working out. You hire Mike McDonald, who I don't feel like was like one of the sexy hires of that cycle. It was like, okay, Mike McDonald, I mean, another defensive guy. They kind of have already had good defenses. Like, you got Geno Smith. You're probably going to want a great offensive coach to probably maximize his abilities. Does this make sense, going with Mike McDonald? And then, you had him there for 1 year. He actually has a pretty good first year, but you don't make the playoffs. And then, controversially, you now get rid of a second franchise quarterback. Again, Geno now is 3 years in a row. You've had winning seasons with him. He took you to the playoffs once. You just missed the playoffs last year, just purely out of a numbers game. It's just, the NFC was so good. And then you get rid of Geno Smith. And it was controversial. There were some people who did not like it, who thought it was a bad decision. And you said we're going to go with Sam Darnold. It was like, okay, if you're getting rid of Geno, you better have an upgrade that was like very obvious and very clear. And he just found another failed Jets quarterback to go to. And you're like, what is going on with Seattle? And these decisions, every single one of them, have been the absolute right decision every single time. Getting rid of Russ, perfect time, and the guy was falling off a cliff. Getting rid of Pete Carroll, as we saw with the Raiders, he was losing his fastball. And keeping Geno for those years. Geno kept you afloat. Geno was good enough to win games. Geno got you to the playoffs. Right when it started to look like, hey, Geno's turned the ball over a little bit. Hey, maybe we're actually not getting the most out of our offense given where he's at. Get rid of Geno. Oh, remember this one also. He also got rid of DK Metcalf. I mean, you get rid of DK Metcalf, who was your number one receiver, it seemed like we thought was almost the entire Seahawks offense, but he saw what I saw last year, which was Jackson Smith-Njigba starting to look like a guy. And one of my worst decisions in the history of my fantasy football life that I will regret and I will think about forever is this year, my second pick, I believe, or maybe it was my third pick. I had targeted Jackson Smith-Njigba because I really wanted him badly because I thought he was having a good year. And it was between him and T. Higgins and the people who were in my draft. And I know Rob was there. He won't know this because he probably wasn't paying attention. But I wound that clock down, I think, to like the last 10 seconds because I did not expect T. Higgins to still be there. And T. Higgins was the one I also targeted. And I was like, T. Higgins is like a guaranteed 1,000-yard season. He's their number one red zone target. And while I didn't like the Bengals, I did like their offense. And and the Sam Darnold effect kind of scared me off of not taking JSN, even though I thought he was underratedly one of the best receivers in the NFL the prior year. And I was like, I'm going to take T. Higgins just because he's a little safer. And it was a worse regret I had because I really felt like JSN had come into his own a lot the previous season. And it would have been high to take him. But I really was planning to take him. It wasn't until some people ahead of me didn't take T. Higgins that surprised me that allowed me to take T. Higgins would have been literally one of the worst draft picks I've ever made. It wasn't even like T. Higgins was terrible, but he got injured, and Jackson Smith-Njigba was basically breaking records in Seattle. It was a disaster for me and my fantasy team. That's why I didn't make the playoffs. One of my worst years ever. But he also had the foresight, not like me, to say, no, Jackson Smith-Njigba is that dude. In fact, DK Metcalf is probably blocking him. The last thing I want to do is give this guy $30 million a year when I have maybe the best receiver in the NFL who's ready to come into his own. They get DK Metcalf out of there. So now you've gotten rid of 2 franchise quarterbacks, one that won you a Super Bowl, a legendary head coach, and one of the best wide receivers of your entire organization's history. And now you're going to the Super Bowl. Like, that level of GMing that's masterclass GMing. That is GOAT level GMing. Because to put together a squad to still put yourself in this position, making those extremely bold moves. It is bold to fire Pete Carroll. It is bold, even if Russell Wilson is kicking and screaming to trade him. It's still a bold to say we're going to trade Russell Wilson, and then we're not even going to go out and try to find someone that can keep us afloat. We're actually going to just keep Geno Smith because we think he can win games, and you actually do. The Seahawks never had to go into tank mode to get here. They never had to go into tear it down, rebuild mode. They were able to do what we think is impossible. They were essentially building the plane while the plane was still in the air. I mean, I don't know how they did it. I still look at their team. I don't know how they made great draft picks. They've picked up the right guys in free agency. They've picked the right guys, throughout they picked the right coach, obviously. But at every moment, it was very fair to question everything they were doing at every moment in time. And because there's that East Coast bias and the Seahawks are all in the Pacific Northwest, it seemed like a lot of folks really weren't all that interested in really breaking down what they were doing, maybe with the exception of Mina Kimes. Shout out to Mina Kimes. I know she's a big Seahawks fan, and obviously she's from the area. But unless you were like, maybe, Brian Danielson, who was a friend of the Maggie and Perloff show. But unless you were like, invested in Seahawks football, no one seemed to be really interested in what the Seahawks rebuild or reshape was looking like. But this was masterclass work, and it's gonna go down if they win the Super Bowl as maybe one of the best roster building eras for a general manager in the history of the NFL. Again, fire a legendary coach, jettison 2 franchise quarterbacks, get a guy in there, a quarterback who everyone thought was a choker and would never come through in the clutch, and you get rid of your one of your best wide receivers of all time, maybe your second best receiver ever behind the great Steve Largent. And this is you saw the wagon that was playing on Sunday? That didn't look like a team that was, we're kind of just, happy to be here kind of group. They were a wagon out there. They've been a wagon since this postseason started. They've been a wagon really since that game against the Rams that they almost blew. They've been basically punching everybody. A phenomenal job. Phenomenal job by John Snyder. Again, he's not a name that is a household name. He should be. And in credit, the ownership group as well and the Allen family, because there was also, because remember, Pete Carroll kind of had more power in that dynamic, or at least just as much power in that dynamic with John Snyder. And it also kind of took ownership group to say, listen, you know what? We're going to choose. We chose between this front office of Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, and we chose the coach and the GM. Then they had to choose between the coach and the GM, and they chose the GM. And it was the right move as well. So the ownership group deserves a ton of credit. Deserves a ton of credit as well. But he deserves a big shout out today to see us advance to what is now their, I think I'm gonna get this right, their 4th Super Bowl appearance. Yeah, because they obviously lost to Pittsburgh in a game that probably should go down as one of the worst robberies in the history of the NFL. But it doesn't, because it was a 2-score game. That may have still been the worst officiated Super Bowl I've ever seen. I mean, the Seahawks got completely hosed on so many calls. I have to rewatch that game just to remember some of this stuff. But I remember watching this game and be like, am I watching this? And I was a kid. I'm like, am I watching this? It feels like I felt like I was watching WWE. And Seahawks didn't play that great. So I think that's part of the reason why we don't talk about it as much. But the rest were very obviously just in the bag for Pittsburgh, it looked like. That's how it appeared. Obviously, I'm not accusing anything of any kind of malfeasance. But it was a awful officiated game. And so that was their first Super Bowl appearance, so that was not fun. the Super Bowl in New York was very fun. They blew out the Broncos. And then you had Malcolm Butler. And now they have their chance to redeem the Malcolm Butler game because they're going to face the Patriots in the AFC title game. Congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks. I'm excited to see them in the Super Bowl. And last thing on them real quickly, because I've heard this conversation, and I mentioned it, I think, on Friday. But, yeah, I think I mentioned it on Friday, and I talked about it on The Fan as well. If you listen to me on The Fan, by the way, thank you so much for supporting me. I'm a part-time host of WFAN, so throughout the year, you will hear me sporadically on The Fan. I was on this past weekend. I'll be on again this upcoming weekend, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the overnight shift. So I'll be Sunday morning, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So if you want to catch me there, make sure you catch me there on The Fan. I'm happy for Sam Darnold. Again, this was, to me, like I said earlier, the Sam Darnold redemption. I still, now listen, because of the matchup, there's no doubt who we're rooting for in the Super Bowl for me. I mean, that's obvious. I don't have any extra rooting for Sam Darnold simply because he was a former Jet. That part I'm still not quite getting from Jet fans. And it seems like most Jet fans are absolutely like saying, oh yeah, no, the Jet fan move before knowing who this team that was going to face. The Jet fan move was going to be to root for Sam Darnold to win a championship. And I want him to do it now because I cannot live in a world where the Patriots are once again Super Bowl champions. That's just not a world I want to live in. That would be, there are many signs out there that suggest we are living in the darkest timeline. The Patriots win a Super Bowl, that would be the confirmation I need that we are indeed living in the darkest timeline. If the Patriots win a Super Bowl, that is the worst case scenario, regardless of who they're playing. But I don't sit here and be like, oh, because Sam was a former Jet and he was done wrong, now I should root for him. I don't get that sentiment. I don't. I do think that he was not supported correctly. I do think his development was completely broken. And if you go back and you listen to, you got to go back into the archives. But now that you've obviously, a lot of you guys have followed New Generation Media, we greatly appreciate that. Some of you have discovered our podcast, New Generation Podcast Network. Again, greatly appreciate the support for that. If you go back and listen to old New Generation Sports Talk podcast episodes from, I guess at that point, what's that, 2020, I guess? 2020, 2021, whatever year that was. It had to be, I forgot what year it was, but regardless. If you go back and listen to those episodes, you will hear me say, if I was the Jets, I would greatly consider drafting an offensive lineman here and not taking a quarterback if you don't get Trevor Lawrence. I kept saying that. Because I said, giving Sam Darnold the support that he needs finally for 1 year, then see if he's good. And if he's bad, then you can get your guy next year. You'll be a bad team, so it won't matter. That is what I said at the time. I will stand by that. And, it just became clear that wasn't going to happen. So you can talk yourself into Zach Wilson. I actually was saying that it should be Zach or Justin Fields. Turns out both guys were bums. But I was saying, leading up to when it looked like the Jets were about to blow that number one pick, I said, I think I may bring back Sam Darnold. I think I might bring him back with 1 year to go, all this cap room, and the opportunity to build the offensive line. They didn't do that. They say, we're going to just give Zach Wilson nothing. And that ended up being also an idiotic decision. So I'm not one of these I hate Sam Darnold guys. I was one of the last ones on the train saying maybe he could be good and maybe we should give him one more shot. But I mentioned it before. It's almost like you could have no issues with your ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, ex-situationship, whatever. Where you're like, oh, I hope they're happy. I hope they live a lovable life. I hope they find happiness. I have no beef with them. I'm just moving on my life. I don't think you're going to say, well, I root for them to find, what's the guy, the Glenn Powell. I root for them to find, a multi-billionaire. I think you could say I'm not rooting for them to I want to see them live a life way more comfortable and way more happy than I live. You could say, hey, I want to live a happy life, and if things go great for them, that's fine. But say I'm rooting for that, I don't know. Maybe I don't know if that makes me a petty person. I don't know if I say I'm rooting for that. Happiness, enjoy yourself, hope you find everything you want to do. And that's how I feel about Sam Darnold. When he left, I was like, all right, I hope he does well. I doubt it. I went by the time he had played so bad at the end. I was like, listen, I don't think this is going to go well. We'll see what happens. He went to Carolina, And I thought a lot of Jets fans maybe were vindicated because he also didn't play well. Like, we got to also own up to some of, everyone wants to put always everything on the New York Jets. And yes, with Sam Darnold, a lot of it does go on the Jets. But he also did not develop at all as a quarterback. He also struggled. He also did not play up to the standard at all. So it wasn't just all the Jets. But I'm happy that he's had a good career. It was never going to work out for the Jets. That's the other thing. Like, sometimes this hatred comes from like, oh, well, if he would have stayed here, the Jets would have won a I have no idea what would have happened. But to me, it doesn't appear, given how the Jets were going to continue to run their team like a complete clown show, that they were ever going to figure it out. So, yeah, go ahead. Hope you have a good career. Do I want him to win a Super Bowl? I'm not rooting for it. I'm not rooting against it. I mean, if he wins it, all right, fine. I'm not going to hate on him. I have no, but am I rooting for it? That I'm like, I'm not rooting for it. Now I have no choice. I have no choice but to root for it now because, again, I've been given a timeline where it's either Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl or the Patriots. And I will take Sam Darnold winning a Super Bowl. He could show up at the Jets facility and deface the entire organization and the entire facility for all I care, if it means that the Patriots don't win a championship. He can go up, win that Super Bowl, and say, ha, you lame-o Jets fans and you idiot Jets brass who gave up on me. Now look at me now. Woody Johnson, tell me how my ass tastes. Like Shaq said about Kobe. He could say that and I'd say, all good, man. Yep, call me an idiot. Call my team bozos. I don't care. The Patriots are not Super Bowl champions. So you can say whatever the hell you want. I will have no issue at this point. Because that is the situation that we're in. There is no way in hell that I'm rooting for the New England Patriots to win a championship. Am I rooting for Sam Darnold? I wasn't really before. I wasn't rooting against him. Wasn't really before. I'm rooting for him now. Sam, go get him, buddy. America is on your side. America needs you. Sam Darnold, you are our hero. Get it done in 2 weeks. And to be honest, after watching the Patriots actually play some football, I don't think he's that much of a problem. I know we are kind of, because the Patriots have been a certain team for the last 20 years, 25 years at this point. Wow, I'm getting old. It's really not 25 years. That's crazy. 25 years, besides this weird stretch of the terrible end of Belichick in the beginning. The beginning and the end, which was 1 year of Gerard Mayo. But outside of that weird stretch, they've been this incredible organization. So I feel like, yes, there is this kind of dread I'm feeling from a lot of fans around the NFL who hate the Patriots. The Patriots have really become the evil empire of the NFL for most of that 25 years, outside of these last 5 years with the Chiefs, where the Patriots, that was the stretch where the Patriots didn't know what the hell was going on. They couldn't manage to wear out a paper bag. I look at this team, and this is not the 2000s Patriots that are going to the Super Bowl. This is the 85 Patriots. So if you remember what happened in the Super Bowl with the 85 Patriots when they faced the Chicago Bears, in what was one of at the time, it was the most lopsided Super Bowl in the history of the sport, and still may go down as one of the worst blowouts in the Super Bowl. I mean, that by points they may have been worse, and like the Rams, obviously I mentioned the Broncos and Seahawks in New York. There's been some other blowouts, obviously, but in terms of just aesthetically, like the statistics, they knocked out two quarterbacks. Like, the Patriots got absolutely destroyed by the 85 Bears, who were an all-time great team. One of the greatest teams of all time, maybe the greatest team of all time. This team looks more like that team than the Tom Brady teams that were going to the Super Bowl, playing at a high level, that were executing everything to a T. This team looks more like a ragtag group that really probably shouldn't be here, that found their way here in part because other teams didn't know how to play up to the standard when it came to postseason ball. And I don't have that great fear about the Patriots coming into the Super Bowl. Now, what I will say about this game, first of all, there's congrats to the Patriots that their rebuild and what they've done. I'll say the same thing, similar to them. If you consider what happened when you lose Tom Brady, you think Belichick can keep it afloat, and you realize, oh man, this guy may have completely lost his fastball as well. And now you got to get rid of him. And they made the bold decision to fire Gerard Mayo after 1 year. We can talk about how fair or unfair it was. At the end of the day, they hired one of the best coaches in the NFL to replace him, and he took them to the Super Bowl. So there's really not much beef you could have at all with the Gerard Mayo firing and where the Patriots are now with Mike Vrabel, who has done a phenomenal job coaching this team. The fact that this team in 1 year after being arguably the worst team in the NFL is now in the Super Bowl. They said they had money to spend. They didn't spend it as much last year, but they spent it this year on some key guys. They drafted extremely well. And obviously Drake May has come into his own as a bona fide franchise quarterback. So to get to this point, and then obviously to get to the Super Bowl, they deserve a tremendous amount of credit from ownership down, front office down. It's a remarkable turnaround. This team, though, has been playing with fire in terms of like their execution, in terms of the position they're being put in to win these games. That they're going to have to play 2 times better than they've played, at least in all of these playoff games, to have a shot against the Seahawks. This game with the Broncos really came down to, in my opinion, 3 things. Backup quarterback in Stidham, who we now learn is a tomato can. Head coach who didn't understand the game he was playing in. And the elements, which was in part the reason why the coach didn't understand the game he was playing in. So the Patriots defense, which has been dominant for this postseason, they were dominant against the Chargers. They were dominant against the Texans, and they also, by the way, they deserve the credit as well for being so good in these elements. Because you don't really, they're in New England, so you think, oh well, New England should just play well in the elements. I mean, this is a kind of a new group with a bunch of different guys who actually they're not. This is not right. Mike Vrabel and Teddy Bruschi and Willie McGinnis walking through that door. This is not Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski and Danny Amendola walking through that door. We actually have no idea how these guys handle elements coming into this year. None. They've been a terrible team. They've been losing these games the last 2 years, 3 years with Belichick and these elements. So we had no idea what to expect. So the fact that two weeks in a row their team seemed much better in the elements than the other team they were facing, including a team from Denver. Mike Vrabel, again, the attitude, the way he prepares, those things, they deserve credit for that. But again, this game felt more about the Broncos' loss than to me the Patriots winning. The Patriots, as I put down in the lower third, I think they outlasted the Broncos. And they had the one drive that one team needed to have, and Tony Romo wouldn't incessantly stop talking about the weather, this snow's going this way, whatever. But it was becoming very clear that the third quarter was going to be the quarter that the Patriots needed to score, and then the fourth quarter was going to be the quarter that the Broncos needed to score. The Patriots scored in the third quarter. The Broncos didn't. And again, that's where I go to the Broncos and them feeling like they lost the game. So number one, Stidham, I will say this to Stidham and to Peyton, it seemed like to start the game, whatever their opening plays were, they didn't obviously do it in the first drive, but they continued in the second drive. Their opening plays, they seemed extremely prepared. It seemed like he was comfortable. And once he started to protect a little better, he was making some plays. So it seemed like they came in prepared. That you cannot say or complain about, I think, from that standpoint. They were able to get an early 7 points. The problem became, it seemed like the rest of the game, it was one of those, everybody's got to play until they get hit. It seemed like once Stidham started to get hit, you actually start to now actually really game manage the game. Once now we start the variables of how the game is going start to unfold, it didn't seem like the Broncos had really any clue how they were going to play the rest of the game, which is why they ended up losing. So I Stidham, and to be honest, he didn't get a lot of support either. Again, I didn't think his line protected him very well. There were some drops as well. So it was not a well-played game, really, from his supporting cast either. I also don't think he has a great supporting cast, which is kind of what I've been saying. Again, they don't have a running game. They could not run the ball. They didn't even try to run the ball against Buffalo. They haven't been able to run the ball since they lost J.K. Dobbins. This game, they tried to run the ball, and whether it was snowing, whether it wasn't snowing, they really weren't having any success. So you had no run game. You have receivers who are kind of dropping the ball and not getting great separation either. And then he also was just not that good. It was a recipe for disaster. So he struggled. He looked like a backup quarterback. I think if Bo Nix is out there, they probably win this game, given what I saw from the Patriots offense. But I also don't know how Bo Nix would have handled those elements in the second half. So it's a variable that because of the game went how it went, it's kind of hard to really do the Bo Nix thing. I guess you could say the first half would have been better, and the game would have been won in the first half. If you want to make that case, fine. The game is 4 quarters. I would have wanted to see what Bo Nix would have done in a snowstorm. I have no idea how that would have looked. I didn't know how Drake May was going to look. I didn't know how any of these guys were going to look. So I think the Bo Nix variable kind of gets thrown out the window as soon as the snow comes, and it's still a tie game. Because now it's all right. Now this game is not about either quarterback. It's about who can handle the elements better. So Jarrett Stidham, turns out he's made okay. Then we get to the head coach, who, and this is the thing about Sean Payton, and I said this leading up to the Bills game. I said how I thought Payton would be better at game management, and that was why I was picking him. But then I kind of, over the weekend prior to the game, I kind of regretted that statement because I kind of started remembering the very odd, weird decisions Sean Payton was making in games that they won. Like they closed out the Raiders, they closed out some of these games, but he was like going for it at times where it's like, bro, just punt the ball, and you were giving them shorter fields. He was punting when he should have been going for it. He was doing some weird things to end games, and there were things that people were looking at being like, man, if the Broncos defense wasn't so good, or the team you were playing wasn't so inept, like these are decisions that would lose you games. Like these would be costly decisions, and I mentioned on Maggie Pearl's show that they were playing a game where Sean Payton did some weird things in the game. Sean Payton, up until this point, had been known as an excellent game management type coach. And I kind of went on reputation thinking about the Bills game. It turned out game management really wasn't a factor in that game. It was more turnovers, and they won the turnover battle. But I wondered about this game because I felt like, okay, this is going to be a game management game. You have a backup quarterback. You are facing an offense that doesn't look very threatening. So to me, this is going to be about game management, game situational football. Who is Sean Payton going to be? I knew he'd take risks. I knew he would be aggressive in certain points, but he's got to pick his spots. He took the early shot early that put them in position with the Mims deep pass to Stidham. Again, those are the plays I felt like the Patriots were going to have to limit. They gave up one early. They limited the rest of them. But situational football. You're in the game. You cannot run the football. It's 4th and short, but you've now seen the Patriots, not just for now one drive. You've seen now multiple drives of the Patriots against your defense. And they had nothing. It seemed very clear to me. I know it was only one quarter essentially, but you've seen them for 3 drives in the first quarter. This is what they were able to produce. 3 plays, 6 yards, punt. 6 plays, 11 yards, punt. 3 plays, minus 5-yard punt. So now you've seen this team. You've seen their game plan. Their plan A was dead on arrival against your defense. That was clear to anybody watching the game. You have to coach the game that you're in. And now you know your quarterback and how your team was playing. You had one big play, but it was kind of clear your offense was, it was kind of hit or miss. It was kind of hit or miss with the way the game was going. But it was like, okay, but we're winning, and we're in a position where now we put them up 2 scores for a team that at that point in time, I'm trying to do this quick math in my head, they would have had 5 yards of total offense. 13 yards of total offense. 6 yards, 11 yards, 6 plus 6, or 11, I guess. 6 plus 11 is, let's do this math, 17, minus 5, 12. So 12 yards of total offense in the first quarter. And not with, we only had 1 possession. They had the ball 3 times. 3 times, and they only able to muster 12 yards. And I was very surprised by the weather situation that happened. I want to apologize to my audience because I when we were previewing this game, I just looked at the ESPN weather bug for the preview, and it said cold, like 20-something degrees, but partly cloudy. So I was like, all right, well, it's going to be cold but no snow. So I don't think weather's really going to be a factor. Weather ended up being the biggest factor you could imagine in this game. ESPN's got to figure that out. It sounds like I was talking, shout out to my guy Gallo. He's a big Bronco fan. Sorry, buddy, I know your team got eliminated. Anthony Gallo from WFAN. He's a part-time host and digital wizard at FAN, and one of my good friends in this industry and just in life. Great dude, and I feel bad for his Broncos went home. But he said that the word that he was getting was, or at least the word he was getting, what he was reading was that it was supposed to probably start around 5 p.m. local time in Denver. It was snowing like basically 4:30, 4 o'clock our time. So maybe they just got burned and like the timeline jumped by as we got closer to Sunday, and the snow that was supposed to come just came very heavy, very fast, earlier than we expected. But it was a day before. A day before I'm giving you the broadcast, and I go to the thing and it says there's no snow happening. And then the next day I'm watching the second half and it's a freaking snow globe. It's literally a snowstorm. I don't that to me, ESPN's game preview bug, you got to figure that out. And it may just be on AccuWeather because they're just using the AccuWeather bug. ESPN AccuWeather, figure it out because that was crazy. You can't put on your thing for a game partly cloudy and I'm watching a whole second half that is a snowstorm. That it changes the entire game, especially if you're someone who maybe put some scratch in this game. I did not because, like I said, I'm not really a gambler. But if you did and you listened to me, I apologize. Or if you just went to the ESPN bug, then you should be blaming ESPN because, like, what the hell, dude? You told me there was no snow, and I see snow. Anyway, Sean Payton, you know the game that you're in. Your team is mid-offensively. The other team cannot move the ball. And you put together a really good drive, 6 minutes off the clock. You shortened the game. You've done all the things you wanted to do, but okay, you came up short. At that point in time, and I'm watching, like, you really got to consider taking points here because, like, going up 10 points in this game could be massive. I know maybe you're worried that the Patriots offense is going to, like, wake up, but they've been in a coma for 2 weeks. Like, I don't, this, and your defense is legit. Like, this just may be the game right now. To go for it there, it was the wrong decision. It was the wrong decision. And here's Sean Payton. He was asked about it, and you know, because you're going to get asked about it, he had mentioned that there was another call that they had that in hindsight he feels like probably was the better call to go with. He had a run play initially called, and given the look that they saw, they thought maybe they could sneak a pass behind him. He realized the first call probably was a better call. But here was Sean Payton about whether or not he regrets not kicking the field goal, go up 10-0.
Do you have regrets for not taking the field goal and going up 10-0?
There's always regrets, you know. Yeah, I mean, look, felt like, you know, here we are 4th and 1. We felt close enough that, and it's also a call you make based on the team you're playing and how you're watching on the other side of the ball. So yeah, there'll always be second thoughts.
But that's why the call is confusing, Sean. Because you say it's based on the team you're watching on the other side. The team you're watching on the other side, it was very clear, was going to have very difficulty putting the ball in the end zone unless you handed them a touchdown, which you ended up doing. But, and again, to go 14-0 potentially, again, is a big deal. But you have a backup quarterback. You have a backup running back. You cannot run the football here because your running game is terrible. You're really going to put the ball in the hands of Jarrett Stidham on a 4th and 1.5, and when you have a chip shot field goal there, it was not good. It was not a good decision, and of course the play was awful. I mean, we want to talk about execution. It had no shot. It was almost intercepted. That's how bad it was. It was not a good play call. It was a terrible decision, and you felt like watching that game, especially as now the snow comes down, and I'll get to the snow in a second as well. You felt like those 3 points are missing from the scoreboard for the Broncos. Like, that just should have been 3 points. It was a great drive, and they should have understood, again, the game that they were in where, yes, you had to pick your spots and be aggressive, but you also had to be very careful and be satisfied at times if you got the points that you were looking for, and he just wasn't. And it was a disastrous decision, and of course that 3 points ends up being different in a 10-7 score. But that's the last thing I want to say on this because, again, we got to talk about the elements being the third factor in this game for the Broncos. The lamest person who checked a ESPN weather bug in preparation for a show to do on a Friday night and thought, okay, there's not going to be snow in the game, is one thing. You, the head coach, who is living in Denver, who I would assume is trying to get as many weather updates as possible as to what's happening in the game. Prior to the game, you know he's trying to figure out what's the snow situation like. When is the snow coming? By game time, he should know there's going to be snow in the second half. This is going to become a snow game. If he didn't, then people on his staff or the preparation and all the things that you do to get ready for these kind of games, then it's a complete failure and they need to change everything. So, but Sean Payton, I never questioned in terms of whether or not he's prepared or things like that. So I'm going to give him that he knew that the snow was coming. If you know that you're going to be playing the second half in a snowstorm potentially, it makes it even more dire that any opportunity you get points, you take them. Because as we then saw in the second half, even makeable field goals are no guarantees. Moving the ball with any kind of consideration, no guarantees. And this is, once again, also baking in the fact that you were playing this game with a backup quarterback. Come on, Sean Payton. Come on. You have to be better than that. You have to know that this second half is going to be turned upside down potentially with snow, and points are going to be the difference here, and it's going to be a tight game. There's not going to be a lot of points scored, and this team can't move the ball on us. I mean, to put yourself in a position where you don't kick the field goal there, it was a failure by the coach. You just gotta kick the point. You gotta take the points, man. I felt like this one was way more egregious than the Sean McVay one. Sean McVay one, you have Matthew Stafford. I understand saying, I'm going for the win, bro. Like, I have the best quarterback in the league. Jarrett Stidham, I'm putting the ball in the hands of Jarrett Stidham on 4th and short. I can't run the ball, so I have no choice but to put the ball in his hands. And then your play call execution was dog crap. I mean, that was a disaster class. And then now the second half comes, now the snow is here. Now you got no shot. Now you got absolutely no shot. You were having a tough time even with the no weather elements. Now you're coaching a weather game with the backup quarterback. And the Patriots who had now played a weather game the previous week, so they were not in a position where they were uncomfortable defensively. They had you you were in their back pocket, man. Like, you weren't going nowhere offensively. So the game was essentially kind of lost on that play. Now, what I will say in general is, after watching the prior week where we watched this all-time classic in Chicago, where despite the earlier game, which was a dog crap game between the Texans and Patriots, you looked at the snow and the pageantry and the awesome play of the Chicago game. You said, see, this is why weather football is amazing. And it was tough for me, the people who sit here and say that weather football is garbage. It was hard to say anything last week. Well, I'm back, baby. I'm standing 10 toes down. That game was awful in the second half. And look, it's football. There are going to be outdoor games. I'm not saying that teams that right now play outdoors should go play indoors. I understand the history of the game and all that stuff. I hate when weather impacts football. If it happens, it happens. There's nothing you can do about it. If you can control it, I say get a retractable roof if you're building a new stadium. But I personally, just in terms of wanting to see, to me, the best team win, I don't think you get to see that when you see a game that gets dominated by the elements. And that's what happened. Like, both the Patriots and the Broncos, when they even moved the ball a little bit, had an opportunity to make field goals, and they had no shot. I mean, the Patriots, as much as I'm excited about my guy, Andy Borregales, a great Miami Hurricane, being their kicker, I've always found it odd that the Patriots got a guy who not only obviously played at Miami, but is also from Miami to be their kicker. I'm like, this guy is probably never practiced in these elements, literally ever. He grew up in Miami. He played at, I believe, FIU initially, and then transferred to Miami. Or maybe his brother played at FIU. I forgot what it was. Either way, this guy is as Miami as it gets, and he's not kicking for the Patriots, where you know you're going to have to kick in snow and crazy elements. He was fine last week. He was not fine this week. And he's a great kicker. I mean, I think he'll be fine in Super Bowl. I wouldn't go crazy. You know, you never know. A bad week can get in the kicker's head and then change things. But Up until this point, he had been phenomenal, and he was, in my opinion, the best kicker in college football when he was with the Miami Hurricanes. So he's typically a weapon. He was not a weapon yesterday. He was completely neutralized. But then Will Lutz also was having all these issues with the Denver Broncos. I don't know how you're a football fan. You sit there and watch that and think, this is great. I love seeing teams struggle with wind and snow and kickers not being able to see the ball they're kicking and not be able to even come close to making field goals. This is fun. I don't know how you watch that and say that was fun. It looks cool for like 5 minutes. Like, wow, that's cool, man. They're playing in the snow. Oh, look, they got the CGI yard markers, which, by the way, might be the second greatest innovation in the NFL outside of the yellow line CGI graphic, where we know what first down markers are. I don't know how many games I watched as a kid, like watching that New England Patriots Raiders game, the Tuck Rule game, aka the Snow Bowl, other snow games I've watched over the course of my life, where you're just watching the game and you just got no clue where the team is, no clue what the first down mark is going to be, no clue how close you are to the end zone, no clue where the end zone is. Those also another reason why I don't like watching snow games, and then having to be able to see, okay, I know where they are, like the superimposed 50-yard mark and 40-yard mark, and the markers are side. Awesome. Love that that's an innovation that we have now. But I hate that that was a game we had to watch. Like, I wanted to see if the Broncos would have been able to figure out how to get Jarrett Stidham going in the second half. I wanted to see if Drake May was able to overcome what was a horrendous first half. Like, horrendous. And he didn't have to, because the weather just changed the entire game. And now, to be clear, he did make a big flea flicker play. He did make a couple of throws, a couple of plays in the snow, but that wasn't a real football game. That wasn't seeing which team can execute the best, who's operating at a higher level. That wasn't anything about that. Neither team was executing basically at all. Only one field goal was scored. And you like that? That was terrible. That was awful. Weather football sucks. Snow football sucks. I don't know how many times I gotta tell you people this. And we just determined who was going to the Super Bowl, where I'm sitting here today, and I have no idea the Patriots were the better team. They scored their only touchdown because Jarrett Stidham tried to do a push pass inexplicably that put them deep in their own territory. And they still were in a position where the game was only tied. It wasn't like, this was the deciding factor in the game. The game was still in the balance, and then the snow takes over. And then we're going to say, well, we feel confident, we feel good that the best team that we saw on Sunday is going to go to the Super Bowl. You know you don't know that. You have no idea. You have no idea. I don't think either team is that good. But do you know who the better team was on Sunday? You do not. You know who the better team was in terms of handling a snowstorm? I don't care if you can handle a snowstorm. That is not at all of interest to me in terms of watching teams competing for a championship. A random Week 8 game, okay, whatever. That's fun. Fine, we'll play a game. For a championship, I don't care who handles snow better. I just don't. I want to see you go out there and play football. Now, cold? Okay, cold, fine. It's cold, whatever. But snow, crazy rain, I don't want to see that. That was a terrible product. An absolutely terrible product, man. And again, these were bad teams. Bad teams is harsh. These were teams that weren't playing that well. And they weren't operating at a high level. And there's a chance that even despite the weather, they still might not score that many points in the second half. But that wasn't a game to me where you're watching and you come away being like, okay, I know now the Patriots went up there and they were the better team. The Broncos gave them 7 points, and then the snowstorm happened. I have no idea what to take from that game, from the Patriots side. Other than the typical defense played hard, defense was awesome, and they showed resilience. And the coach didn't coach his way out of losing the game. That's what I saw. I saw a coach on the other side, a quarterback who was a tomato can, and a coach who coached his way out of winning the game. I don't want to see a champion determined by a backup quarterback's inability in the first half, and then a coach coaching his way out of not being able to coach his way out of a paper bag, and that determines who the better team was. No, I want to see the best athletes in the world decide on the field who the best team is. And we didn't get to see that. And now I go into 3 weeks in a row, and I have no idea if the Patriots are capable of playing on a championship level. They're not. They're not playing on a championship level right now. Can they? I have no idea. There's been The defense is playing really well. The defense is also playing against teams that seem extremely compromised for various different reasons. The Chargers, extremely compromised because their offensive line was completely inept. You credit the Patriots defense for taking care of business. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. Because there are other teams that play bad offensive lines, bad backup quarterbacks, and they struggle. There's a reason why Jeff Hostetler and Nick Foles are folk heroes, no pun intended. Like we saw other teams had to face those kind of guys and lose. So it's not like it's a guarantee that you're gonna win. They took care of business. There's no disrespect to the Patriots defense. But I'm looking at this situation, man. I'm like, what? Weather? Really? Are the Patriots any good? First week, offensive line can't block anybody. Justin Herbert, who's basically his own individual mass unit, is out there getting destroyed. All right, you won the game. Your offense did nothing for almost most of the game, but you won the game. It's playoff football. Okay, we move on to next week. Then next week, C.J. Stroud just literally at times just throwing the ball up for grabs. Just throwing the ball up for grabs. Completely shook. And okay, you catch those passes, you make those plays, you turn them over. Again, no disrespect to the Patriots defense, but it's a 3 phases game, and your offense again looks like dog crap for 3 quarters. Like okay, you're not really moving the ball. Your quarterback's fumbling the ball left and right, but it doesn't really matter because the other team and their quarterback has lost his mind. So you're gonna get plenty of opportunities to make up for any mistakes you make. And now this week, you play back a quarterback who then also had a mind-numbing turnover that gave you your only points because your offense was once again stuck in the mud, no pun intended, and then a snowstorm hits. You win the game. I don't think any Patriot fan sits here and says, oh yes, I confidently feel like my team can go up in a Super Bowl game and execute offensively in a way that is necessary to win a Super Bowl. You don't believe that. There's no way you can believe that. You have no proof of that. You can hope that. You can say, I'm hoping, given what I saw in the regular season and 2 weeks preparation and Josh McDaniels and blah, 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 that we can go out there and do that. And maybe it will happen. It's just we haven't seen that. And I hate the fact that the weather elements actually took away an opportunity to see, will they ever figure this thing out? I think that the Seahawks are going to win this game in 2 weeks. But take that away, like, maybe the Patriots, second half, they come out like gangbusters and they look great. And that man say, okay, this looks a little different. Josh McDaniels making adjustments that we didn't expect. We will never know. So now, again, I feel like I'm coming into a team. I've never felt coming into like a playoff situation. I've never like been so unsure about like how good a team is heading into a Super Bowl than this Patriots team, given the road that they had to travel through, given the teams that they faced, given the situational football they've had to play in. Bad weather, quarterbacks who are a mess, offensive lines who were a mess. They won these games, but and they're worthy of being in the Super Bowl. They were one of the best teams in the AFC, and they handled these elements better than everybody else, and these situations better than anybody else. But I mean, this road is not really telling me much. So Patriots win. They're going to advance to the Super Bowl to face the Seahawks in 2 weeks. That game is going to be an NBC Peacock game. So it means Chris Collinsworth, as good as he is, I think he actually is a really good broadcaster. I think he's grown into becoming a really good broadcaster. I would be curious if there are any over-unders on like Patrick Mahomes mentions in a game that Patrick Mahomes is not playing. Because, he loves himself some Patrick Mahomes. So it'll be fun. But Tirico and Collinsworth should be good on this game, but the way I'm feeling early, feelings evolve. You learn more about these teams. You study more about these teams, and we'll have plenty of guests. I'm trying to see if I can have as many guests as possible during Super Bowl week to talk about the game. The only way I see the Patriots winning is if Sam Darnold like truly turns back into a pumpkin and like becomes the guy that everyone thought he was, prior to this last game. If he, and listen, Mike Vrabel and the defensive staff, they have really they've put together a team. But they have a real, their coverage, their back end is so good. It's underrated. Christian Gonzalez, watching him against JSN is going to be definitely worth the price of admission, even if it means you're spending basically your life savings to get to this game, to actually go to the game. I was just watch it on television, but that match was going to be awesome, and their defense that is kind of like a no-name defense, but they have improved so much throughout this past season, and they've become one of the best defensive units. So they're going to show up. They're going to be prepared. I just, again, feel like with the Patriot offense also playing against now a great defense again, another defense that's going to get after the passer, another defense that's not going to make it easy. I have a hard time believing that they can win this game. That's just where I stand as we sit here on January 26th. But the game ain't until February 8th, so we'll talk more about the game, get more breakdowns on this game. But I don't think you can feel great about where the Patriots are right now if you're trying to handicap the matchup. But you're going to the Super Bowl, you're the kings of the AFC, and you're back on the mountaintop. Well, not the mountaintop, but you're near the mountaintop. Just 5 years. Think about those long, hard 5 years of Patriots fans complaining, oh, man, wow, we're really bad. Wow, we're not winning Super Bowls. Is this what it feels like for all you NFL peasants? Yes, this is how it feels like. You only suffered it for 5 years. I've been suffering it for 34 years. And the Patriots, 5 years of some pain, and then they're right back in the Super Bowl with the first year of Mike Vrabel. It's crazy. But some folks have it better than others, I guess we say. And that's definitely been the case with the Patriots. So let's move on, though. Let's talk about some coaching news. I actually think there might have been, before I even get to the McCarthy stuff, I did see some Schefter tweets as I was working, as I was talking to you folks, that obviously I didn't want to jump off and say, oh, what did Schefter just tweet? I believe we might have some news in the Broncos coaching search. Not Broncos, the Browns coaching search. And some Broncos fans that probably hoped there was a coaching search today after what they saw from yesterday. But just the latest from Adam Schefter. Nothing like super major at this point, but just something to note here. And I'll see if I can pull up my share screen so you guys can see this. Jaguars OC has informed the Browns he's removing himself from consideration for their head coaching position per a source. Udinski has a new deal in place with Jacksonville that will bump his pay for next season, but the Jaguars are allowing him to continue to pursue the Bills' head coaching job. If Udinski doesn't get the Buffalo job, he will be back as a Jags OC. I can't remember the last time there have been all these weird deals with OC deals happening pending someone being hired by a head coach, or hired to be a head coach for a team. This feels new. Because we have this Mike McDaniel thing. We reported that Mike McDaniel had been hired as a Chargers OC because that's how it was being reported. But then he also was apparently still in the mix for other head coaching jobs. I thought he just knew that he wasn't going to be a head coach. So he kind of just said, all right, whatever. But he was taking his name out of certain jobs. And then it looked like he maybe took his name out of Buffalo. But then he did interview with Buffalo. So then I was like, well, he's going to be the Chargers OC as long as he doesn't get a head coaching job. I remember just being like, you just waited until you were told you weren't going to be a head coach. And then you signed on to be an OC or DC. Now I'm seeing guys making deals to be OCs or DCs prior to knowing whether or not they're going to be a head coach, which is probably good for the actual guys. Like, I feel it's good for Grant. It's good for Mike McDaniel. But this just seems new. I don't remember this being a thing. But Udinski has been a guy who has been talked about with the Browns job. The Browns job looks like the one that nobody wants. And I get it. You got to handle maybe a Deshaun Watson situation this year where he may have to actually play for you. This after the owner had already said we made a mistake and you think that you would never have to see this guy again after he tore his Achilles. And now it sounds like given where they are, given where the draft is shaking out, and the money that's owed him that they can't get rid of really, you may have to deal with him still on your roster. You got the Shedeur Sanders situation that once again found a way to get into the news cycle this week because of comments from Jamel Hill, who I think what I'll say about them is I feel like people are misreading what she said. Not to say that like what she said also wasn't kind of like crazy to read, but I think they're misreading what she said and they're also jumping to conclusions. There's also some rage baiting that's obviously happening because you say Jamel Hill's name and people get angry immediately just for no reason or for a reason, whatever. But she had mentioned how now I don't know if you're like I'll put this in quotation marks, reporter. And I say that respectfully to Jamel only because Jamel is like, she's now like a columnist, and she's like beyond, she's beyond a reporter now. I think of her as more like a commentator, some people say a hot take artist, but like whatever. Even when I don't want to say anything like negative about her in any way. But I don't look at her as a quote unquote reporter. I think of her as a best way to describe it is like a commentator. So maybe that takes away a little bit of like the whether or not this was even appropriate to bring up. I thought it was kind of odd just to say Falcons fans I talked to don't want Stefanski because of how he treated Shedeur Sanders. How many of those people are you talking to? Is that reflective of the entire fan base? I'm not saying it's not. It just felt a little like you're playing kind of loose and fast with kind of a judgment on Stefanski without us. I don't really know if that's the case. That most, okay, you're the fake people and she mentioned like it's a black city. There are a lot of black fans of Falcons fans. It's part of the reason why I know people will like to joke about, like Atlanta doesn't really care about the Falcons, and and listen, Atlanta is not the greatest sports city, but it is one of the blackest sports fan bases when it comes to the Falcons, and there are a lot of people who, yes, they can chew and eat gum or whatever, walk and eat gum, whatever the thing is. Chew gum and walk at the same time is the right euphemism. They can chew gum and walk at the same time. Yes, I know they love the Georgia Bulldogs, but I think they could also like the Falcons. Maybe not as much as Georgia, but they still like the Falcons. What I have always shown, and I do know there are a lot of black NFL fans in the city that do love the Falcons. Now, is it the entirety of the city? Is it as intense as most other NFL cities in terms of just overall fandom and support? No, but there are a lot of people who love the Falcons. And she mentioned black NFL fans, so I assume she talked to black people about the feeling about Kevin Stefanski. But the black fans aren't the only fans that represent the Falcon fans. There's fans of all creeds, obviously. So I just thought it was a weird commentary just because you're going off of people only and you're saying, and you mentioned, it's black fans who feel a way about Dion and don't like what happened with Shedeur. It just seemed like a odd commentary, in my opinion. I'm not surprised if that's the case, but I just thought it was weird. I say all that, though, to say I'm kind of trying to figure out if I kind of went all around in circles with that. But I just found that to be weird. Well, I say all that to say Stefanski's now gone with Cleveland. And it looks like the rest of the NFL coaches around the league have kind of looked at that Cleveland situation and said, that ownership and that front office is a problem, and that situation is a problem, not the head coach. I'm not going to go in there and do a better job than Kevin Stefanski was doing. So I want nothing to do with that job. So, and they very well could be right. I've said a bunch. I think Kevin Stefanski is a very good coach. I actually feel like some of the smoke that the Shedeur fans have for Stefanski, I actually feel like they probably should have for Andrew Berry. To me, Andrew Berry seemed like the guy who didn't really want Shedeur that much initially and didn't seem all that happy to have him. Stefanski initially seemed like he was saying a lot of the right things. And Shedeur, at the end of the day, ended up playing a lot for Stefanski. Did they play well under him? No, they were a bad team. And there might not have been any scenario where Shedeur would have performed well. I don't know if it was a Stefanski issue. Do I think he should have been elevated to number 2 when Dylan Gabriel got elevated to number 1? Yeah. Are there moments where maybe he could have said, hey, listen, this guy's going to start earlier? Yeah. But I felt like some of these things were a little like bang, bang, and it seemed like people were just jumping out the window because they love Shedeur so much. But the fact that now you're going to see the Browns hire probably one of the lower end candidates for this job tells me that they're a franchise that's stuck in they're like in neutral. Like I don't know what direction they're going in. I have no idea. So another name goes off the board, Grant Udinski, a guy that Kendall actually mentioned a bunch when he was on again on Friday prior to the technical issues, because he actually, he was on the staff in Minnesota under Kevin O'Connell, and Kendall obviously was on that staff as well. And Udinski has skyrocketed up the coaching carousel tree and he deserves a lot of credit for that, and and his hard work and everything. But the fact that this guy, again, a guy who is like a couple years ago was literally the assistant to the head coach, like just like the Dwight Schrute, the assistant to the regional manager. This was literally Grant Udinski's job, and he's here now, and he actually has a chance to potentially be a head coach for the Buffalo Bills, and he's now signed a deal that is going to pay him handsomely as an offensive coordinator for a team he doesn't even call plays for. He's put himself in a good position, and even he's being like, I'm good on the Browns. I don't need that. If I get the Bills job, great. If I don't, I'll just go back to Jacksonville and let Liam Cohen draw up these plays and see whatever opportunity I can get coming up here. So that's just the news I saw. I want to make sure I got that because I saw that flash on my notifications. I just want to make sure it wasn't anything big. But Grant Udinski no longer being considered for the Browns because he removed himself from consideration, and he will go back to being OC for the Jaguars with an increased pay raise unless he gets hired by the Bills, which apparently is still a possibility. Which, again, I'm not used to this order of business happening in this way. Typically, it's he doesn't get hired by the Bills and then he signs a contract extension. I never heard the extension's already signed, but then if he leaves, then he can go to the Bills. It just seems weird. But we did have some other coaching news here, so we'll do that before we get out of here, man. Enjoying this show. Again, this is 40 days and 40 nights, man. We talked a lot of Championship Sunday, which is great. We're already in the hour and 45-minute mark, and I feel like I have to do another 2 hours, man. This is the best time of the year, one of the best times of the year in the sports calendar as we get to Super Bowl week coming up in just a week. We're 40 days and 40 nights. Again, this is a show hosted by your boy EJ Stewart. 2 live streams per day. One at 8 a.m. One at 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Catch us on YouTube, where we're streaming live right now. New Generation Media is where you'll find us. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you like this video, please like this video. It supports the channel. It gives us more people to find us, and it's a great help. If you like this video, you comment in the comment section. You comment once the video is updated, just saying, hey, good job, love the show, or hey, EJ, you're an idiot, and we hate that show. Whatever it is, I'll take the engagement. So please make sure you subscribe to the channel and support that way, New Generation Media. Again, we're also streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. If you're not following me on there, make sure you give me a follow on X, EJ_Stewart. And we're streaming live on Instagram Live, Action EJ. And as always, every show for 40 days and 40 nights gets podcasted. So if you're watching the show and maybe you got to leave, you got to step out because you got to go for a run, or you got to go on a drive, and you may miss certain parts, or you're in an opportunity where you can't watch the show live or once it's already posted on YouTube, because every episode that's on YouTube, it already stays up there. There's a playlist on the channel, and there's a podcast playlist on the channel that has all the episodes, so you can always go back and watch them. But if you're in a position where you can't watch them, you can always go to our podcast channel to listen to every episode of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Just head to any podcast source where you go to: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play, whatever you use. Go to your podcasting hosting source, search New Generation Podcast Network, and you'll find all these episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights on the New Generation Podcast Network, plus all the other podcasts we do as well. We do Hero Talk, which is our Marvel DC podcast. We do Imperial Broadcast, which is hosted by my brothers Shamari and Kendall Stewart. They do a awesome Star Wars podcast. That is the Imperial Broadcast. And then obviously my wrestling podcast with Lucas Goldman, who's a former WWE writer. That is also on the podcast channel, so make sure you check it out there. New Generation Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcast. So real quickly, other coaching news we got over the weekend. This one, I won't say is a stunner, just because it's, there's geographical ties that make it make sense, but I was still a little surprised they went this route. The Steelers announced that they hire Mike McCarthy as their new head coach. Mike McCarthy, of course, he is coached in Green Bay and he is coached in Dallas. He does have a relationship with Omar Khan. They both work together in what's it called? New Orleans back in 2000. I was like, oh, that's right. That is where Mike McCarthy's career started. I kind of forgot about how far this thing goes back. But they go back some time now, and he's now going to be the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've said a bunch throughout these shows. I've said it a bunch on my WFAN shows. I've said it a bunch on Maggie and Perloff show. I didn't understand why Mike McCarthy was being so undervalued during this head coaching cycle. I fully am aware of some of the gaffes he makes, some of the questionable coaching decisions, some of the time management stuff, the lack of playoff success since winning that Super Bowl early on in his career. I fully, totally get that. He is still a highly successful head coach who has won a Super Bowl, who has made the playoffs a ton, who has advanced in the playoffs. And I find it troubled to think that some like Robert Saleh and some of these other guys that are getting head coaching jobs, I find it hard to believe that a guy like Mike McCarthy, who just finished coaching in Dallas, and yes, the last season wasn't good, but before that, you win 12 games, 3 years in a row? You put together one of the best passing offenses in the NFL. I didn't understand why he was seen as some leper. I didn't see why he was some black sheep, particularly for me. Yes, if I was a team that was trying to get to win a championship and I was looking for a guy to get us over the hump, I don't think he would have been a worse hire, but he might not have been my guy. But there were plenty of teams, I thought, who were kind of in, we have a young quarterback mode and we could develop this young guy with a coach who has been there before, who knows the habits it needs to develop that guy correctly. And for teams that needed an adult in the room and needed someone with some experience, I thought he was a great candidate. I thought he was a great candidate in New York, though they obviously went with John Harbaugh, who's a fine candidate. I thought he had to be the guy in Tennessee. Tennessee, to me, seemed easy. And then they went with Bob Saleh, and I'm like, you have Cam Ward, who's a young quarterback who's shown some talent, but to me has definitely shown he needs to be kind of coached how to play the position the right way. Because he takes some big risk. He's got a crazy arm, and the arm talent is there, and he makes some plays that are just special. But he needs a coach who can put some structure in his game. Mike McCarthy developed Aaron Rodgers. He elevated Dak Prescott from being just an average quarterback to a very good quarterback, and they had awesome passing offenses in Dallas. You might not win a championship with this guy, but just ushering in some winning football, ushering in some winning habits, being able to develop a young quarterback, it seemed like Mike McCarthy was a perfect fit in some of these places. Okay, he doesn't get those jobs. That seemed bizarre. He gets the Pittsburgh Steelers job, which is interesting to me because it's one of the jobs I probably really wouldn't have strongly advocated him for. I was a little surprised when the initial interviews went out. It didn't seem like he was on that list just because he is from Western PA. He's kind of a Pittsburgh guy, and he would understand the community, understand what the Steeler way is. So to me, that seemed like a fit from that standpoint. But the one thing that I was concerned about was the Steelers, to me, look like a team that need to be in rebuild mode. They have a quarterback who's ancient, who may not even be back, and there's also concern for me that you made this decision in part because you're hoping he is back. I actually don't think you should hope Aaron Rodgers is back. I think this was the year you need to see where we give one run with these guys to see if we can win a championship with a veteran quarterback. And you saw that you can't. You saw you can make the playoffs, but you can't win a championship. This should have been the sign, especially now that Mike Tomlin, you were able to get off of Mike Tomlin, 10 wins in a cloud of dust roller coaster. Once you're able to get off of that, now this is your time to say, okay, we can do a real rebuild. Let's get a young guy in who, yes, he may have to learn a little bit about coaching in the NFL and stuff, but we can do what we've done with the Steelers. Hire a young coordinator, put him in a great position in terms of the support staff and everything here in place and just the organizational structure that would allow that guy to grow into this role of being our head coach for the next 20 years. Because it happened 3 times in a row already, it seemed like that was right there for them potentially. There were plenty of guys. I mentioned Nate Shieldhouse as someone I thought I really was excited about potentially maybe getting this job. I mean, Mike McCarthy, what is he? I want to say he's like 55 years old. He might be older. Let me double check on that Mike McCarthy age. Mike McCarthy is 62. Wow, I was way older than I thought he was. He's 62 years old. I don't know the team that they see. I don't see a Steeler team that is competing for a championship. Maybe they look at a weak AFC and they're like, listen, this AFC sucks. If we could luck our way into a quarterback, or we could find a quarterback to replace Rodgers that's any good, maybe we can. Maybe if you squint and see it, but I think that this team clearly needs a rebuild. They need to restructure their salary cap situation. They need to reinvest in the draft and then reinvest in the young talent that they have, and retool this thing so that they could maybe take one step back but end up taking 2 steps forward. Mike McCarthy, I think, is probably, if he gets you he was talking apparently Will Howard is someone he's very interested in, and I'm, the guy was a 6th round pick. I'm not gonna, bang the table, be like, well, they got their young quarterback of the future, so this is the spot for Mike McCarthy. That seems a little ridiculous. But to me, this screams you're still trying to stay relevant. This screams you're still trying to stay in the playoff hunt. This screams you're still trying to stay quote unquote competitive. When that shouldn't be the goal at this point. The goal should be, how do we build this thing to the point where we could be a championship team? And what is the easiest way to do that? It's not going to be trying to hope that Jalen Ramsey gets any younger, or that TJ Watt gets any younger, or definitely that Cam Hayward gets any younger. That guy is old as dirt. He's a phenomenal football player. I can't believe how good he still is. But he's like 38. And he plays like he's 38. Not that he doesn't play well, but I feel like he goes out every game with some knick and knack injury that he didn't have to come back from. I'm like, oh my God, he's hurt again. But I think it's like Greg Popovich when certain players, when he was really kind of sticking it to the NBA when it came to the low management stuff, and he would just go, Tim Duncan, DMP, old. I feel like a lot of these, little knick and knack injuries that Cam Hayward would have, Cam Hayward, questionable return, old. That should have been the injury designation, or even probable, because he almost always came back. He would get hurt. I think, oh my God, he may be done, and he'd come back out there and play. But I say that to say, this is an old team, man. It's old on defense in some spots that you don't want to be old in, considering your offense is as bad as it is. You also, obviously Arthur Smith is now somehow the offensive coordinator of Ohio State. Maybe we'll get to that on night 11, because that was some stunning news too. But, I mean, really, what are you holding on to? Art Rooney says that, they didn't do this with the idea that Aaron Rodgers is going to absolutely be here. But it does look like, okay, you lose Mike Tomlin. What coach available is the guy that would make it most likely that Aaron Rodgers would maybe give it one more try? You'd have to say McCarthy, purely because they just worked together before. That relationship did not end well in Green Bay. It feels like fences had been mended because they've been very complimentary of each other in the recent years since. So now that doesn't always mean I want to go back and work for you. I mean, I know you probably have bosses that, you did not enjoy working with, but you had some good years and you had some good successes, and if you see them on the street or someone asks you about him, you say, oh yeah, shout out to him, shout out to her, whatever, we had great years, and you kind of move past the end. You don't want to think about the bad times, you think about the good times. That doesn't necessarily mean I want to go back and work with them again. Or same thing, I mentioned a lot of the the romance relationship euphemisms. You may have, again, the next day you're saying, oh, it was really bad at the end, but then 10 years later, 15 years later, you say, oh, I got no beef for them, shout out to them. We had some good times, good years, or whatever. You're not running back to them. You're not saying, oh, I want to date them again. So it almost feels like if that is at any point part of this equation, that feels like a Hail Mary, because I have no idea if Rodgers wants to work with Mike McCarthy again. He said nice things about him. That gives me no indication that he still doesn't think he's a moron, which, according to the reporting, Ty Dunn was all over this. That's essentially what was being said. That Aaron Rodgers thought that Mike McCarthy was hurting the team because he was way behind when it came to advancements in the NFL. He thought the game had passed him by. That was the reporting. He now thinks, how long ago when they were together? 8 years? 8 years later, he thinks Mike McCarthy now knows the game and now knows the advancements in football? Even though I would argue he has. But I'm thinking about Aaron Rodgers' mind. Not a mind I want to get into, but this is the mind we're in because this is the show we're doing. This is the conversation we're having. You think he now thinks that Mike McCarthy is the right kind of offensive mind to lead his last year of his career when in the prime of his career he wanted this guy fired? I find that hard to believe. So I hope that's not the reasoning why. But, McCarthy's a pretty good coach. If he goes there next year, well, he will be going next year. And let's say they have Rodgers or some other kind of comparable quarterback, Steelers will probably be okay. They probably won't be like one of the worst teams in the NFL. They probably will win between 8 and 10 games. And the Steelers fans will be right back where they were. They'll be right back in that we're in no man's land and we don't know where we're going here. And instead of having a young, progressive mind who maybe, could see and foresee the next generation of Steelers football, they will have an old head who is now going to be coaching what is probably going to be his last NFL head coaching job. And I don't know if that's really the kind of spot I want to be in with this guy. If McCarthy would went to some of these other places, some teams that have some youth but maybe need to learn how to win, quarterbacks that need to learn how to play the position, loved him as an option. And I'd even like him a little more if you were trying to get over the top to win a Super Bowl. That's not my preferred spot, but I would say, okay, he has won a Super Bowl. And maybe just he gets away from Jerry Jones, the right spot, and maybe he actually finds a way to get you over the top. The worst place I think I could have seen him going to was a team in limbo. That's the last place I want to see because I think he's just going to keep you there. He's going to keep you in limbo, and you're never going to be good enough to win a championship unless they feel committed to say, even though we hired an older coach, we're willing to rebuild this thing. It sounds like they're not. So if they're not going to do that, then I don't know what the point of this was, man. I really don't. I think I'm going to leave it there, man. We had 2 hours. There's some coordinator stuff that happened. The Giants hired Jannard Wilson as DC, and the Packers hired Jonathan Gannon as their DC as well. I want to get to that maybe in night 11 of 40 Days and 40 Nights, but we've gone long. We've gone 2 hours here talking championship Sunday and the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers being Mike McCarthy. But I think that's a good place to leave it, man. So I want to thank you guys so much again for checking out 40 Days and 40 Nights, a live stream hosted by your boy, EJ Stewart, every weekday, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. I'll be back at 6 p.m. with more news, more headlines, more fun conversation. Of course, for those watching on YouTube, thanks so much for checking us out. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. For those on X, EJ_Stewart is where I'm streaming live there. Thanks for watching, and of course, follow me on X, EJ_Stewart, as well as people watching on IG Live. Instagram, Action EJ is where you'll find me there. Make sure you follow me on TikTok as well. I'm on TikTok. Action EJ is where you'll find me. Like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, if you want to catch episodes of this podcast, they will be up almost immediately after the podcast is over, or rather the live stream is over. I post them almost immediately. You can find that wherever you get your podcast at New Generation Podcast Network. That'll do it for today, or at least for this morning. I want to thank you guys again for watching. We got Seahawks. We got Patriots. Super Bowl 60 is set. I'm not feeling good about the Patriots' chances. We're going to have plenty of time to talk. I'm sure we'll have plenty of people who will try to convince me that the Patriots can and will win this game. So I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited to continue our road to the Super Bowl. Thank you guys for watching. I'm EJ Stewart. I'll catch you guys at 6 p.m. later.